Hi. Welcome back to Berg Mountain Optional University's English Literature course #Estoiles of Liberty, Anglo-American Literature. We trust you slept well. In our fourth Estoile of Liberty we discuss the Great Awakening in frontier lands brought about by an evangelical revival at the turn of the 18th century meant it began as 1699 became 1700 just like the 21st century began 24 years, 2 months, and 7 days ago. Won't you come along with us?
Fourth Estoile of Liberty IV. Evangelical Revival / Great Awakening. Johan Kalvin, April 10, 1509 to May 27, 1564. Who knows how many read John Foxe's book of Martyrology published in 1563 and wished to share with the world honest perceptions of man's conflict with nature. Many take our First Amendment right of freedom of speech for granted, because neither under kings nor popes was there its precursor, freedom of thought. Busy with settling land, raising crops, and populating the earth, human nature as it does today prods men to specialize efforts in vocations, ushering them to daily tasks which affords them places to sleep so they may return in the morning. Stuck in rat races of yesterday like bees in hives, most people fell under the two umbrellas of legions or religions, the king, or the pope, biology or theology, and even linguistic or pontifical. With no time to look up to the stars or down on maps to scale or roughly approximate, most had little sense of direction in relation to themselves or of space and time. Not paid in chickens, shirts, hats, or moccasins to think man defaulted to clergy or king's men in nobility. The two left no room for a third, as women hadn't nor wouldn't birth another baby in a manger. Why? Well, because bastards and orphans in society weren't allowed to own land or even breed, as the security ladies preferred was in noble lineage, far from looks and in neither humor nor wits. Bastards and orphans were made noble through victory in war, but that's outside of society, four walls, and things artificial like squares, i.e. architecture, though in the wilderness there was lenience where the long arm of the law was hoped never to extend. At any rate, some specified in cordwaining and others blacksmiths, but ethics, virtue, and piety were lacking in the outskirts because ministers were not free and neither was education, as men followed their fathers. Bastards and orphans could not. The first and second Great Awakenings were so evangelical, reviving those born in mangers, gracing many, like indulgences for dimes, with qualities previously strictly reserved only for ordained ministry, piety, Stoddard, virtue, Whitefield, and ethics, Henry Alline.
In the first Great Awakening, piety, previously reserved for ordained ministers, was bestowed by Solomon Stoddard, 1643 to 1729, in exceptionally pious men of New England, broadening the Holy See per se. Sure, we might be speaking now of increased matter were it not for his witch trials, but they happened, and we're not. For 55 years Stoddard's position was unparalleled in Massachusetts, as evangelical was not only men with others, but with matters which trials women preferred life squared under Stoddard. With primogeniture second sons, thirds, bastards, and orphans escaped Western European war and migrating had space to be fruitful where original sin was less a concern than children bred unbaptized was. Evangelically and linguistically English placed men on an evangelical accord where divided by piety his ministry revived a dying religion amongst a scattered flock. Amongst other writings, he published The Inexcusableness of Neglecting the Worship of the Lord's Supper in 1708. In the frontier, Stoddard, from an Orthodox Reform upbringing, was known as the Puritan Pope of the Connecticut River Valley in his concern for second-generation Puritans in the colonies. He was insistent that the sacrament ought be afforded those whose lives were lived outwardly pious, as his ministry was revived, labeling men pious who weren't considered before then now. As the observance of law or morality is expected though not always achieved, many knew not piety, while those so were even more so solemn, as was Solomon Stoddard. As the first librarian of Harvard, accepting man's imperfection, the halfway covenant was born, men were awakened and evangelically revived. In Northampton, Stoddard, after the Glorious Revolution, was second minister, subordinate only to Prime Minister Robert Walpole. Resembling philosophy, rational theology disputed theses, and though from covenant, it differed from Calvinism, which caused division in the Calvinist theology.
In virtue of evangelical revival, George Whitefield, 1714 to 1770, was a founder of the Methodist Church, where the Great Awakening in those born in mangers would be methodologically through virtuous acts. Technically, one's first legion to biology is the king's. Further from nobility, in religion men found purpose and confirmation that their lives had some meaning and effect in the world. An Anglican from Gloucester in southwest England, from the Crypt School to Pembroke, he thought himself morally right and ethically good. Be that as it may, he hadn't then yet converted from the King's Legion to Christ's religion until reading Henry Scougal's The Life of God in the Soul of Man. After his conversion in 1736, he was ordained a deacon by the Bishop of Gloucester, though without a church in fields and parks he'd preach to those further from the politics of the church. Embracing Calvinism and joining the Holy Club at the university, he there meet John and Charles Wesley. Migrating to Savannah, Georgia, in 1738, Whitefield would become a priest of Christ Church founded by his old classmate John Wesley. Then he'd found Bethesda Orphanage. Accepting the Church of England's Article 17 on predestination differed from the Wesley brothers' Arminian view of atonement. Forming the First Methodist Conference, where presiding, he would resign to more evangelical work with the Countess of Huntington, Selina, as her chaplain. Though a plantation owner and slaveholder, slavery was banned in Georgia in 1735, but concerned, more so for African orphan salvation than labor, him and James Habersham were influential to slavery's reintroduction in Georgia in 1751. He wrote an open letter to the planters of South Carolina, Virginia, and Maryland in 1740 against cruel treatment of slaves. He composed Hark, How All the Welkin Rings in 1739, revised in 1758 as Hark, the Herald Angels Sing.
The Great Awakening and Evangelical Revival was even more so ethically understood through Henry Alline, 1748 to 1784, who was known as the Apostle of Nova Scotia. A New England planter from Newport, Rhode Island of the New Light movement, his leadership coincided with the Second Great Awakening. Most prolific as a writer and the first great Connaughty on Protestant, he had 3 religious experiences, first at 8, second at 20 and third at 28 years of age. He wrote 487 hymns, sermons, a court for the trial of the anti-traditionalist, and 2 mites cast into the offering of God, for the benefit of mankind. Why? Well, it's either that or war. Attack.
The Great Awakening was so an evangelical revival in piety, virtue and ethics influenced by Solomon Stoddard, George Whitefield, and Henry Alline.
That concludes the information we have you this time. Next session we cover native moral enlightenment theory in the 5th Estoile of Liberty. We hope to see you there. Thanks for your time and consideration.